It was the dead of winter in Melbourne, August 2023, and the biting cold of Almeida Crescent in South Yarra offered a deceptive stillness. Just before midnight, the quiet was shattered by a sudden, devastating intervention. When first responders arrived at the scene, illuminated by the harsh glow of streetlights reflecting off a luxury apartment complex, they found a man who had just lost his life. But this was no random misfortune. The victim was a man whose reputation preceded him, a figure who had long navigated the razor's edge of the city's hidden empires. His name was Muhammad Akbar Keshtar, though the syndicates knew him almost exclusively as Afghan Ali. To some, he was a respected broker of power. To law enforcement, a deeply feared enforcer. His influence extended far beyond standard street operations, positioning him as a central architect in the city's highly lucrative, fiercely contested illicit tobacco trade. Yet, as investigators secured the crime scene that freezing night, the focus wasn't just on the deceased, but on the staggering audacity of the event. This was a highly targeted operation, executed with chilling precision in a bustling neighborhood. Why would a man of such immense influence, someone who fundamentally understood the lethal currency of underworld politics, find himself outmaneuvered outside his own sanctuary? He had chosen this specific residence precisely for its formidable security measures: swipe access, secured parking, the very amenities sought by men who know they are actively being hunted. It was meant to be an impenetrable fortress. Yet, those physical defenses proved tragically insufficient against an adversary who had clearly monitored his every move and anticipated his routine. Taking down a figure of Ali's stature required sophisticated intelligence, vast resources, and an ironclad motive. Law enforcement immediately recognized that this fatal act was not a conclusion, but a dangerous escalation. The sheer brazenness of striking in such an upscale, well-monitored area spoke volumes about the perpetrator's confidence and their deliberate message to the highest tiers of organized crime. The investigation that launched that night would soon unearth a shadow economy worth millions, where loyalty was a luxury few could afford. As detectives began piecing together the fragmented evidence at the scene, a haunting question remained: who possessed the expansive reach and the sheer nerve to orchestrate the downfall of one of Melbourne's most heavily guarded syndicate players? To find the answer, they would have to trace the victim's footsteps back to a life originally forged in distant conflict. Long before the tragic conclusion on Almeida Crescent, the trajectory of Muhammad Akbar Keshtar began in a region defined by intense historical conflict. Born in Afghanistan during a period of profound instability, his earliest years were shaped by an environment where navigating severe adversity was a daily necessity. As the political landscape deteriorated in the 1990s, his family made the arduous decision to flee, finding temporary refuge in Pakistan before eventually settling in Australia. Ali was 19 years old when he arrived, stepping onto a completely different cultural stage. Those who knew him during those initial years described a remarkably different individual than the syndicate figure he would become. He presented as a fiercely driven, hard-working young man, hailing from a deeply respectable, law-abiding family. Finding employment in the security sector, he worked exhaustively as a taxi driver and a nightclub bouncer, seemingly laying the foundation for a quiet, industrious life. However, the shadows of his past and the volatile energy of Melbourne's bustling nightlife soon began to heavily influence his path. The facade of the diligent security worker fractured publicly in May of 2000. At the now-defunct Dome nightclub in Prahran, a heated altercation rapidly escalated into a severe public incident that would officially mark his entry into the criminal justice system. After being ejected for a physical dispute with staff, Ali returned through a side entrance armed with a high-caliber firearm. In front of hundreds of patrons, he discharged the weapon, severely injuring a fellow security professional, while his associate escalated the chaos. The event was particularly shocking, because both men were well-known entities within the local security circuit. This severe misconduct resulted in a litany of serious legal charges and served as a dark omen for his future. His associate in that event would later vanish under highly suspicious circumstances in 2009. A baffling mystery that remains unresolved to this day. Yet, the nightclub incident was merely a prelude. Released on bail, Ali's unpredictable nature surged again in 2003, this time with truly devastating consequences. Driven by intense personal grievances and reportedly under the heavy influence of illicit substances, he confronted his partner at a residence in Burwood. In a highly volatile state, he discharged a weapon multiple times. While both his partner and a male acquaintance miraculously survived the ordeal, they sustained critical life-altering injuries. Faced with overwhelming investigative evidence, his attempts to deflect blame onto other underworld figures completely unraveled in court. The legal system delivered a definitive response, a formidable 15.5-year sentence. This judicial ruling effectively stripped away his freedom, but ironically, the stark confines of maximum security would serve as the ultimate crucible, transforming him from a reckless operative into a deeply connected syndicate powerhouse. The sentence delivered by the courts was meant to be the end of Muhammad Akbar Keshtar's influence. Instead, the high-security walls of Bahrain prison became the very architecture of his rise. Imprisoned in one of Victoria's most heavily guarded facilities, Ali did far more than simply survive. He actively reshaped the internal hierarchy. According to correctional intelligence, and those who observed his climb, he systematically built a network of alliances that transcended mere violence. He recognized early on that power within maximum security required a sophisticated blend of protection, strategic associations, and sheer intimidation. While some inmates perceived him as a necessary guardian who could navigate chaotic prison politics with cunning, others recognized the deeply unstable, ruthless core that commanded pure fear in the yard. It was during these formative years behind bars that Ali forged critical links with the Mongols' outlaw motorcycle club. Although not a founding member of their Victorian chapter, he positioned himself as an indispensable, highly trusted affiliate. This alliance was unprecedented. He essentially acted as the bridge between Middle Eastern syndicates and established Bikie Network's DC strategic merger that would eventually define and reshape massive segments of Melbourne's organized crime economy. When he finally re-entered society on parole in 2017, after serving more than a decade, authorities were acutely aware that he was no longer just an unpredictable former bouncer. He was returning as a highly connected architect, with the potential to destabilize the city's fragile criminal ecosystem. There was intense speculation, not just regarding his next strategic move, but about the violent retribution his mere re-emergence might provoke. Those widespread fears materialized almost immediately upon his release, though the outcome was tragically misdirected. In late 2017, a heavily coordinated strike was executed against a residence where Ali was staying. The attack, designed with lethal precision, was meant to eliminate him before he could re-establish his empire. But in a heart-wrenching twist of fate, the assailants encountered the wrong man. Zabi Ezzadar, a 26-year-old plasterer and friend of Ali, had arrived at the location only minutes prior. Surveillance and investigative accounts suggest the attacker panicked under pressure, ultimately ending Ezzadar's life under the mistaken belief that the target had been neutralized. The profound error shocked the criminal landscape. Authorities quickly identified a key suspect connected to a rival motorcycle gang, who managed to flee overseas before apprehension. Although Ali emerged from the incident physically unharmed, the tragedy forced a radical shift in his operational strategy. The near miss underscored the terrifying reality that his enemies were actively mobilized. From that moment forward, he significantly reduced his public footprint. While he actively deepened his syndicate ties, particularly regarding lucrative black market ventures, he largely retreated into the shadows. However, in a volatile environment where loyalties are purchased and power is perpetually contested, those shadows could only offer temporary sanctuary. As the criminal landscape evolved, Muhammad Akbar Keshtar astutely recognized a monumental shift in the underworld economy. The primary focus of organized syndicates was rapidly pivoting away from traditional contraband and shifting toward a seemingly mundane yet exponentially profitable enterprise: the illicit tobacco trade. Australia's exceptionally high financial regulations on legal cigarettes had inadvertently catalyzed a booming black market. By the early months of 2023, Ali had tightly aligned his operations with the Hadara syndicate, cementing his position as a crucial stakeholder in an unprecedented and highly secretive criminal alliance. This formidable collective, ominously referred to within inner circles as the Commission, was a strategic amalgamation of powerful Middle Eastern organized crime figures and dominant outlaw motorcycle groups, notably including factions of the Finks and Mongols. Their overarching objective was highly ambitious: to completely monopolize Melbourne's underground tobacco supply, strictly regulate fiercely contested territorial boundaries, and systematically distribute hundreds of millions of dollars in untaxed annual revenue. In theory, the commission was engineered to enforce a strict peace protocol among rival factions, minimizing disruptions to their immense cash flow. In reality, the formation of this shadowy council acted as the direct catalyst for an unprecedented turf war. Ali's prominent role as a diplomatic enforcer, tasked with maintaining this delicate balance of power, simultaneously elevated his underworld status and painted a massive, undeniable target on his back. The fragile ceasefire disintegrated entirely when an exiled syndicate boss, operating from the Middle East after being deported for major trafficking convictions, initiated an aggressive campaign to forcibly seize control of the industry. Kazam Kazhamid was reportedly enraged by the Commission's calculated maneuver to completely exclude his network from Melbourne's most lucrative racket. Refusing to be systematically sidelined, the exiled boss orchestrated a relentless campaign of extortion and severe property damage from thousands of miles away. He ruthlessly implemented what became known on the streets as the Kaz tax, demanding exorbitant monthly tributes from local retail operators under the severe threat of coordinated retaliation. His operatives explicitly targeted commercial fronts aligned with the Commission, meticulously aiming to dismantle the financial infrastructure supporting the Hadara network and their key allies, including Ali himself. Within a matter of weeks, this aggressive incursion resulted in more than 70 targeted arson events across the city, dragging a hidden economic struggle directly into the public eye. As the conflict fully ignited, Ali found himself standing at the highly dangerous epicenter of a multi-million-dollar war, fully aware that his adversaries were preparing to permanently dismantle his empire. The echo of the fatal act on Almeida Crescent had barely faded before Victoria Police's elite homicide detectives were fully mobilized. Within hours of the brazen assassination, investigators recognized they were facing a highly sophisticated syndicate operation, intrinsically linked to the escalating illicit tobacco war that was ravaging the city. However, unraveling the precise mechanics of the hit proved to be a monumental challenge. Muhammad Akbar Keshtar's sprawling affiliations with Middle Eastern crime factions and notorious motorcycle clubs had constructed a formidable, almost impenetrable wall of silence. Potential witnesses, bound either by terrifying loyalties or a paralyzing fear of ruthless retribution, completely refused to cooperate. Even the associate walking mere steps from Ali during the fatal encounter, who miraculously escaped physically unscathed, vehemently declined to assist law enforcement. The streets were locked in a chilling, self-preserving quiet. Recognizing that traditional investigative avenues were completely blocked by this entrenched underworld code, authorities pivoted to a far more aggressive psychological strategy. In September 2024, Victoria Police launched an unprecedented public offensive, anchored by a staggering $1 million reward. This was one of the largest financial incentives ever authorized in the state for information regarding a syndicate elimination. Yet, the financial lure was only half of the master plan. In a highly rare and calculated legal maneuver, the Director of Public Prosecutions broadcasted a willingness to grant full indemnity. This exceptional offer targeted peripheral players, individuals possessing intimate knowledge of the planning phase, but who were not the principal offenders, offering them a total legal shield in exchange for credible testimony. It was a high-stakes gambit, explicitly designed to fracture the foundational loyalty and paranoia holding the rival factions together. For 20 long months, the tactical pressure yielded little more than whispers and shadowy speculation. But eventually, the overwhelming weight of the investigation shattered the underworld's protective veil. On the morning of April 4, 2025, the silence officially broke. In a meticulously synchronized strike, the Special Operations Group descended on a location in Dandenong. They apprehended 23-year-old Idris Kayali, a once promising teenage boxing prodigy whose athletic dreams had somehow mutated into a grim reality. Charged with the fatal act and conduct endangering life, his sudden capture marked the first monumental milestone in the intensely frustrating case. The investigative momentum was now entirely unstoppable. Barely 2 weeks later, on April 15th, detectives announced a second, crucial breakthrough. Abdullah Hussein, a 25-year-old who was already incarcerated at Port Phillip Prison for entirely unrelated allegations of severe misconduct including an aggravated home invasion and assaulting a correctional officer, was formally charged with his role in the Almeida Crescent tragedy. His deep entanglement in the case provided law enforcement with the definitive proof they had long suspected. This was never the erratic action of a lone operator, but rather a carefully funded, meticulously orchestrated elimination, sanctioned by the highest levels of the shadow economy. By May 2025, the judicial spotlight shifted to the Supreme Court, where the sheer gravity of the sweeping accusations clashed with desperate pleas for liberty. Idris Kayali stood before the judiciary in a high-stakes bid for temporary release. The prosecution painted a highly chilling portrait, formally alleging that Kayali was the tactical operative who emerged from the stolen vehicle on that freezing August night, executing the final, devastating actions against Afghan Ali. To reinforce the severe threat he supposedly posed, prosecutors illuminated his deep-seated connections to notorious syndicate figures, notably including a former motorcycle club boss who had himself recently survived a highly publicized elimination attempt. The defense team mounted a vigorous, highly calculated counter-narrative. They vehemently highlighted the glaring absence of concrete forensic anchors, most notably the fact that the weapon utilized in the fatal act had never been recovered by investigators. Furthermore, they sought to humanize the 23-year-old, by detailing his severe psychological trauma and a profoundly heart-wrenching family tragedy occurring overseas. Offering a massive financial surety and strict electronic monitoring, they passionately argued he could be safely managed within the community. Yet the presiding judge remained entirely unmoved by these appeals. Citing the profoundly serious nature of a public firearm discharge and a documented history of severe physical altercations, the court definitively deemed the risk to community safety utterly unacceptable. Clad in a dark suit, the accused offered a quiet, stoic reassurance to his deeply distressed family, as he was systematically escorted back to a fortified cell. While two alleged tactical operatives now await their ultimate fate, the true resolution of the Almeida Crescent tragedy remains frustratingly elusive. For veteran detectives and Underworld analysts alike, the apprehension of the suspected perpetrators is merely the opening chapter of a significantly darker volume. The systematic downfall of Muhammad Akbar Keshtar served as a catastrophic fulcrum point in Melbourne's expansive shadow economy, blatantly exposing the extreme lengths to which rival factions will go to monopolize the illicit tobacco trade. The most dangerous mysteries are yet to be unraveled. Who possessed the immense financial resources required to fund such a meticulously planned multi-vehicle operation? Who issued the ultimate, lethal directive from the safety of the shadows? And who truly stands to inherit the fiercely contested empire left in the wake of his sudden removal? The power dynamics of the city's hidden networks are continuously shifting, fueled by ruthless ambition and deep-seated grudges. As investigators relentlessly pursue the true architects of this sprawling criminal conspiracy, the underworld holds its breath, waiting for the next inevitable fracture. What are your theories on the true mastermind behind this unprecedented syndicate war? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this investigative dive into the Australian underworld compelling, please subscribe and leave a like to help the channel uncover more hidden truths. Until next time, stay vigilant and take care.